his own or her own personality. They're as different from each other as we are. For another thing, when they communicate non-verbally, they use the same postures and gestures as we do, and they're basically in the same context. Kissing, embracing, patting one another on the back, when friends greet, swaggering and shaking the fist, when males meet and have to reassert their relative dominant status. It was a very exciting day when I learned that chimpanzees can use and even make tools. When I first got to Gombe, the chimpanzees would take one look at me and run away, because they're very conservative and they'd never seen a white ape before. That's what I was. So I was getting really worried. We had money for only 6 months. And I knew that if I didn't see something exciting in that first 6 months, that would be the end of the study. I would have let Louis Leakey down. So it was a very exciting day when this one chimpanzee, the first one to lose his fear, whom I had named David Greybeard, I saw him as I was walking along a trail, crouched over a termite mound. I saw a black hand reach out, pick off a piece of grass stem, use it as a tool, pushing it down into the termite mound, waiting for a moment, pulling it slowly out, biting off the insects that were gripping with their jaws. And then I saw something even more exciting. I saw him pick a leafy twig and carefully pick the leaves off. He was making a tool. This doesn't sound exciting today, but back then it was very exciting because it was thought that humans and only humans used and made tools. And when I sent a telegram to Louis Leakey, you know, I wonder how many people in this room even know what a telegram is. Because you have email now. We didn't even have fax or telex back then. We used telegrams. And I sent a telegram to Louis Leakey because I knew how excited he would be. And he sent a telegram back. And he said, well, now we have to redefine man, redefine tool, or accept chimpanzees as humans. Because we were defined back then as man, the tool maker. So that was a very exciting discovery for the scientific world, although many scientists didn't believe it because I didn't have a degree. And why should they believe this crazy young English woman who was living out there with the chimps? But anyway, it was also exciting because the National Geographic Society saw the photographs, realized that this was something special, and gave money so that I could continue in the first 6 months. Money ran out. And so I went on with the study and began to realize what to me has been really exciting and fascinating, how the chimpanzee childhood is long, because like us, they have to learn. They're not born with a whole set of instincts like insects. The young chimpanzee, like the young human, learns by observing, by imitating, and by practicing. And so they have a very long childhood, just like our species does. And for 5 whole years, the chimpanzee child rides the mother's back, suckles from her, and sleeps with her at night until the next baby is born. So there's a 5-year spacing between live births. Chimpanzees, unlike us, don't overpopulate their forest world. There's a fairly high infant mortality, and quite a lot of females never have more than 2 living offspring. So all through the years I've been at Gombe, these 54 years, there has been absolutely no indication that chimpanzees overpopulate their environment. And watching the development of the relationship between mothers and their offspring, between brothers and sisters, has been absolutely fascinating, and these relationships persist through a life which in the wild is about 50 years. In captivity they can live to be much older. The oldest one that we know is 75 years old. She could be a little bit older. She cannot be younger because we know the day that she arrived in the United States as an infant whose mother had been shot in the wild. So over these years at Gombe, I think the saddest part and most shocking part for me was finding that in certain situations chimpanzees show a dark side to their nature, just like we do. They can be violent and brutal. They even have a kind of primitive war. And we watched how our main study community, with around 8 adult males, systematically invaded the territory of a neighboring community and attacked individuals there and left them to die of their wounds. It was a horrible time. I hated observing that. And then the victors took over the territory and added it to their own. And it sounds very human, doesn't it? And it is. But we have to also realize that chimpanzees like us can show characteristics of love, compassion, and altruism. Imagine that we're following 2 young chimpanzees, an 8-year-old female and her little brother. And we're going along a trail through the forest. And the mother is way behind us. And suddenly the leading female, she's 9 years old, she stops. Her hair bristles a bit, sign of fear. She gives a little, whoa, ah, and rushes up a tree. Little brother, Prof, maybe he doesn't hear the sound, maybe he doesn't know what it means. He carries on along the trail. His sister gets more and more agitated. Every hair stands on end. She has a big grin of fear. And finally she can't bear it anymore and she rushes down and picks up her little brother and climbs back up the tree. And there, coiled up at the side of the trail, is a big poisonous snake. There are so many stories like that. Basically what the chimps teach us is that there is no sharp line dividing us from them. We are part of and not separated from this amazing and wondrous animal kingdom about which we are still learning, about which there is so much still to love. So isn't it tragic that because of our human impact on the planet, this animal kingdom all the time is shrinking? Other than human animal, I should say, because we're animals too. And it was when I realized in 1986 at a big conference in America with people who were studying chimps in different parts of Africa, was when I realized at that conference how right across Africa, through the chimps' range, forests were disappearing, chimpanzees were being hunted for food, hunted for the live animal trade, hunted so that mothers could be shot and babies shipped off to zoos or circuses or medical research. And at that same conference, I realized that in some captive situations, chimpanzees were horribly suffering in the medical research labs, 5 foot by 5 foot prison cells, where they had no comforts, they were on their own. These are very social animals, and they were suffering from, as a human being in solitary confinement, because they're so like us that they can catch or be infected with our diseases which other animals can't catch. And so I went to that conference in 1986 as a scientist. By then I had my PhD. I left as an activist. And since that day I haven't been more than 3 weeks in any one place. And I first began traveling around Africa, talking to whoever I could, NGOs and people in governments, talking about what was going on, taking a little exhibition with me. It was a sort of one-man, very primitive exhibition, which was photographs, and I had tools used by chimpanzees in different parts of Africa because they use different tools, and that tool use is passed from one generation to the next through observation and learning, and it's a culture. And so I was traveling around Africa talking about the plight of chimpanzees, but I was learning about the plight of all the other animals, and I was learning about the plight of so many of the Africans living in abject poverty, with terrible disease, with ethnic violence, and realizing that an awful lot of their problems were the remnants of the old colonialist era, of which my country, Britain, was so responsible, and realizing too that many of the big international corporations today sweep into Africa, and they want to take the resources of Africa. It's rich in minerals, it's rich in timber, and all kinds of things. And they can also grow their crops and reap them and harvest them and send them back to their own countries, leaving the Africans always poorer. And so I thought, well, I better start traveling in Europe and in North America.